With her wild hair and her comments about her slothful husband, Fang, Phyllis Diller made millions of people laugh. But there was a woman drowning in secrets beneath the cackle. She drove to the same location every week for it than 30 years, but her fans were unaware of it. She loved someone more than anyone inside those walls, yet she was never allowed to discuss their condition on stage. The actual heartbreak started when the visit ceased in 1993. Phyllis continued to work long after her heart literally ceased beating, which can be explained by what she concealed from the public. On July 17, 1917, Phyllis Diller was born in Lima, Ohio. At the time, her parents were exceptionally elderly. Her mother, Frances, was 36, and her father, Perry, was 55. This implied that Phyllis was surrounded by elderly folks in funerals all the time as a young child. She had an unusual fascination with death, whereas most children dreaded it. Her comedy would later revolve around this odd ease with somber subjects. Despite coming from a German-Irish background and being Methodist, Phyllis rejected religion at a young age. When she was young, she experienced adversity, but instead of becoming resentful, she became humorous. Outside of class, she would make jokes with her classmates at Lima's Central High School. Even though those moments were brief, they marked the beginning of something far larger. Her family's finances were devastated in the 1930s when the Great Depression struck. In order to support herself, she began peddling newspapers, gradually constructing the resilient exterior she would require in the future. Oddly, she didn't even realize until she was an adult that her last name had been Triber for centuries. She found herself making up stories as a child because she grew up in a quiet and frequently lonely home. Before long, such tales began to resemble ironic remarks. In 1927, Phyllis was admitted to the Sherwood Music Conservatory in Chicago at the age of 10. Her proficiency on the piano was well beyond her years. She began performing professionally with orchestras in 1939. Even though that sounds amazing, she gave up. She felt she would never be as excellent as her teachers, not because she wasn't good. Although it was a difficult decision, she felt in her heart that it wasn't the correct one. It wasn't any easier during the Great Depression. After 3 years, she was forced to leave Sherwood in 1933 when her family's finances ran out. In order to make ends meet, she began accepting any job she could. She later said that she might have been saved by giving up music. She had succeeded. She had changed her course to something better. She made another attempt at college in 1935, attending Bluffton to study music education. However, she departed once more in 1937, this time to get married. Comedy would find her despite her years of regretting giving up her goals. Sherwood, who worked at a bomber production in Ypsilanti, Michigan, moved there with Phyllis in 1940. Life was difficult. On September 27 of that year, when the nation was heavily rationed during the war, their son Peter was born. Families were forced to live on $25 each week. She experienced postpartum depression as a result of the combination of her new motherhood and financial strain. They made at least 8 moves between 1940 and 1945 before settling in California. Sherwood found employment at the Alameda Naval Air Station, but Phyllis was the one who kept everything together because money was constantly short. The radio programs she listened to while cleaning the house gave her solace. They sowed a seed with those voices and those jokes. In 1944, Sally, her second child, was born. Since Sherwood was frequently unemployed at this time, Phyllis accepted a position as a newspaper editor. She would subsequently use that expertise as a secret weapon. They almost lost their house in 1953, but it somehow became the beginning of everything rather than shattering her. Her career was just getting started, and she was 37 years old. She gave birth to a boy in 1945, which was tragic. They called him Perry, according to some sources. Some claim he passed away anonymously. 2 weeks later, he was dead. She was broken by it. Doctors said it was because he was too young and the medical assistance available at the time was insufficient to save him. Sherwood had recently lost his work, and they were still residing in Alameda. Everything seemed hazy. Phyllis, who was only 28 at the time, took action in response to her suffering. In San Francisco, she began participating in local theater performances. She was able to conceal her pain via performing. However, the heartache didn't stop there. Shortly thereafter, she miscarried. She would become pregnant 6 times in the ensuing 10 years. 5 kids made it out alive. She started writing once more during this period, submitting pieces for a mere $2 each, all the while concealing her sorrow with a grin. Phyllis gave birth to Suzanne, Stephanie, and another boy, Perry, between 1946 and 1950. 5 children were left to live as a result. However, their wealth did not increase as her family did. Sherwood wasted a $10,000 bequest that may have saved them by turning down jobs he believed were beneath him. They could hardly afford powdered milk because they were on food handouts. Phyllis wrote for small papers and made $15 to $20 a week. It was a difficult life. She had no support structure, no assistance, and 5 children under 10. However, she made it all into a joke rather than letting it all come apart. Stories about chaotic motherhood and sit-down husbands would abound in her future humor. It didn't feel amusing back then. It was like drowning. By 1952, the situation worsened. Due to $300 in overdue rent, they were forced to leave their house. Phyllis received her first steady salary that year, $75 per week, working as a radio copywriter at Caro in Oakland. They were saved by the employment. She made fun of housewife advice in a 15-minute episode titled Phyllis Diller, the Homely Friend Maker. Despite its silliness, the name gave her a voice. She finally gave it a shot after 2 years of Sherwood's pressure. She performed live for the first time at a hospital for veterans. She blew it. She played the piano despite being jeered by patients, but she persisted. She used the shame as motivation. She performed stand-up for the first time that same year. And she persisted even when they had to pawn jewels and struggled to pay the rent. She kept the difficulty of the situation a secret. Then the pivotal moment arrived. At the age of 37, Phyllis had a performance at Purple Onion in San Francisco on March 7, 1955. She was adored by the audience. She wasn't attempting to be as glitzy as other women. She ridiculed her life, her food, and her appearance. Her cuisine may kill you, she joked. People were laughing uncontrollably. It began as a brief employment and lasted for 89 weeks. The club earned over $100,000 from her performances for almost 2 years, and all of a sudden, this exhausted mother of 5 was receiving attention. Even though she only made $100 a week, by the next year, she was getting TV ads. She praised The Magic of Believing, a self-help book she had read, with encouraging her to take the stage. She had discovered something special for herself after 15 years of being a stay-at-home mom. She changed fully in 1956. She produced a memorable stage appearance. Even though she hardly smoked, she carried a long cigarette holder, painted her face with excessive makeup, wore a wild horsehair wig, and donned contrasting outfits that made her appear both dazzling and ludicrous. She did it deliberately. She realized she needed to make a statement because she was almost 40. She chose to be as ugly as she could be and accepted it rather than attempting to be beautiful. Her reservations increased by 40% almost immediately. She began to appear on national television programs. She now owned over 50 wigs, each ranging in price from $50 to $100. Her trademark cigarette holder was made of ivory and measured 12 inches in length. Her legend included all of this. However, underneath it all, she was concealing suffering from a tumultuous marriage. She made strength out of that suffering. Like a lampshade in a whorehouse, Phyllis's debut comedy album was released on June 15, 1958. Everyone was taken aback by the title, and some retailers refused to carry it. In its first year, however, it sold more than 50,000 copies. Sherwood was barely mentioned in her jokes about Fang, a slack fictitious husband. There were only 20 individuals in the little Los Angeles studio where she recorded the album. The humor was quick and unfiltered. She could speak at a rate of 200 words per minute. By 1959, the album had earned her TV deals and $10,000 in royalties. Even Fang came from an odd background. She maintained it even though it was the result of a programming error, ultimately penning more than 1,000 jokes about him. This album's success demonstrated that women could be just as fearless, witty, and forceful on stage as any guy. She was constantly touring by 1959. She performed at more than 150 locations, including the renowned Blue Angel Club in New York. She earned $25,000 and covered 50,000 kilometers in that 1 year alone, 3 times as much as she had made 4 years before. Her 50,000 handwritten jokes, arranged by theme on index cards, were housed in a specially constructed steel cabinet. After performances, she would sit at her typewriter and create 100 new jokes each week. She performed so frequently that, after a 48-hour travel, she once passed out from weariness. But she persisted even after that. A pretty strange occurrence happened on television in 1961. Everything changed on April 5 when a woman appeared on the Jack Paar show. She was not youthful, she was not well-groomed, and she most certainly did not meet the standards of Hollywood beauty. Her age was 43. Phyllis Diller was her name. She came from a broken marriage, had 5 children, and had only begun doing comedy a few years prior at the age of 37. Under the strong studio lights, she stood with a long cigarette holder in her hand, a fright wig on her head, and a loud cackle that made people gasp or laugh. Most people would have given up. She was open about her difficulties. She came up with the joke for them. She described her tumultuous home life in ways that made others laugh aloud and branded herself ugly before anybody else could. She was unlike any woman on television. Not one. She continued even though she was afraid and trembled so much that she could hardly hold the microphone. She wasn't just noted because of that one appearance. It made her a household name. Other shows called. Comedians like Roseanne Barr would subsequently claim that she revolutionized their lives when she appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. This so-called ugly duckling had unexpectedly shot to fame. In 1966, 5 years later, Phyllis took yet another significant chance. The Pruitts of Southampton, her debut sitcom, was broadcast on ABC. She portrayed a wealthy woman who was actually broke, feigning to be wealthy so that no one would discover the truth. It was a crazy spectacle. She attempted to cook a turkey in a washing machine on one episode. Among the odd characters that popped up on the show were Paul Lynde and John Aston. Halfway through the season, the show's name was even altered, and in January 1967 it was renamed The Phyllis Diller Show. It concluded in April after only 30 episodes. The ratings weren't good. It came in at number 77 out of 91 shows. She was nominated for a Golden Globe despite the failure. And it caused others to come to another realization. Phyllis had no fear of failing. Not in life, not on TV. Later on, even TV Guide named it one of the worst shows ever. But rather than ignoring it, she continued to appear. She traveled with Bob Hope throughout the Vietnam War, making soldiers laugh when they needed it most. She discovered a second home on game programs about the same period. She started to appear frequently in Hollywood squares in 1967. She made appearances in 28 episodes until 1980. She delivered memorable punchlines from her small booth in the tic-tac-toe board. When she chased a garbage truck and said, "Am I too late for the trash?" it became one of her most well-known jokes. "No, get in right away," the driver replied. Her magic was that she made fun of herself, which made everyone laugh. People adored it. She wasn't behaving like a celebrity. She was being honest. She became famous as a result. Backstage, the performance was like a party. She developed genuine friendships with the other celebrities while recording 5 shows per day. Additionally, fans were able to witness a different side of her. Her singing was poor. She was a heavy smoker. She hardly slept because she had 6 children at home. However, she made all of that humorous. Eddie Murphy said that her laugh affected his own. She wasn't only kidding, either. Long before anyone recognized her name, she was paving the way for women like Ellen DeGeneres. She then got her own variety show in 1968. It debuted on NBC on September 15 and was titled The Beautiful Phyllis Diller Show. It concluded in December after just 13 episodes. The program featured interviews, comedy, and music. Her guests included Norm Crosby, Bob Hope, and Goldie Hawn. She sung despite her inability to do so. It was Phyllis. Whether it was flawless didn't matter to her. She merely desired enjoyment. After 3 months, it was discontinued due to poor ratings once more. However, this setback strangely contributed to her notoriety. Stars like Lady Gaga would subsequently be influenced by her outrageous performances, big hair, and daring costumes. She went on another Vietnam trip with Bob Hope in the same year. In the animated film Mad Monster Party, she also provided the voice of the monster's mate. Even though the ratings didn't always reflect it, she was everywhere. Although her 1970s film career wasn't very successful, it did have some memorable moments. She played Mrs. Zero in The Adding Machine in 1969. Despite the film's poor box office performance, critics were taken aback by her depth of heart and seriousness. She made a brief appearance in the Oscar-winning film The Sunshine Boys in 1975, and she starred in The Great Balloon Race in 1977. She made an appearance in A Pleasure Doing Business 2 years later. She also assumed the lead role in Hello Dolly, a Broadway production, on December 26, 1969. She performed 8 gigs a week at the age of 52. Few were aware that her family life was in disarray behind the curtains. She was left to raise her 5 children alone after her husband, Sherwood, was diagnosed with mental illness in the 1950s. Just to make ends meet, she worked every night. But she continued. She joined The Gong Show in 1976 and laughed through the insanity while judging absurd acts. She also made an appearance on Match Game PM. She was constantly playing, laughing, and yelling. She even appeared in numerous episodes of The Love Boat from 1977 to 1986 and The Muppet Show in 1979. She had more than 40 film credits before the end of the decade. In 1966, she even made more money than Bob Hope on one of their films. Her timing was impeccable, and boy, did I receive the wrong number. She produced an album as well. It was released in 1968 with the title Born to Sing. It wasn't serious. She ridiculed her own tone. The jokes and off-key songs were part of the purpose. People adored it. She combined stand-up with music. Her repertoire featured humorous tunes like Hello Young Lovers and Satisfaction, all performed in her own unique style. Although the record didn't perform well, it helped her sell out her tour dates. Few people were aware that she taped it while she was in hell. Her marriage had fallen apart. She was poor. For decades, Phyllis saw her daughter Sally once a week without disclosing that she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She smiled in public. She was hardly able to keep herself together in private. Her 1968 TV show was a result of that album. She also made fun of psychic readings when she voiced herself in the new Scooby-Doo films in 1972. She was loved by her fans. Many members of the gay community found beauty in her vivid colors and unapologetic honesty. In all, she put out more than 10 albums. They all seemed to be small acts of defiance. She transformed into a voice in the 1990s. She portrayed the Mouse Queen in the Canadian animated film The Nutcracker Prince in 1990, which was a dismal failure, making only $1.7 million out of a $8.5 million budget. Her performance, however, was noteworthy. Her nasty voice, full of delight and laughter, made parents grin and children giggle. In 1998, she appeared in A Bug's Life as well. This generated more than $363 million. Even though she had a great voice in cartoons, she had experienced silent heartbreak once more. By 1990, her son Peter was suffering from cancer, and her daughter Sally was still in an institution. At age 53, he passed away in 1998. She continued to travel, smile, and quietly visit hospitals. She did something no one had ever done before in 1984. She produced a plastic surgery video. A genuine home video, not a joke. It was titled Phyllis Diller's Home Video Guide to Plastic Surgery and it cost $39.95. She discussed her nose job, facelifts, and other procedures in it. She claimed that it improved her mood in addition to her appearance. She also made a joke about how her surgeon cut off her earring because he was so cheap. However, this was not only humorous, it was audacious. No one at the time acknowledged having surgery. The American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery recognized her honesty with an award. People paid attention when she referred to herself as the Queen of Plastic Surgery. She made discussing it acceptable. Joan Rivers even followed her example. She made her fashion a business in 1985. She debuted her own brand of bizarre clothing and wigs. She was making money off of jokes at the age of 68. She offered costumes similar to the ones she used on stage and wigs that resembled her own wild hair. Loud, bright, and unforgettable. For years, she had been wearing wigs every day because her natural hair was no longer able to withstand the taunts. She gained a lot of money from her business, which also had an impact on drag performers and LGBT fans who viewed her as a queen rather than just a clown. She shocked everyone once more in 1996 when she was 79. She appeared as the colorful and witty makeup artist Gladys Pope in the serial series The Bold and the Beautiful. She made an unexpected combination of comedy and drama in 11 episodes. People adored it. Most were unaware of her deteriorating health. By 1999, she required a pacemaker because her heart had stopped beating in 1997. However, she continued. She didn't. Then came her last stand-up special in 1998. It was broadcast on NPR and was titled Phyllis Diller, Still Out for a Chuckle. She was 81. Her voice broke. Her aging jokes struck a deeper chord than before. And there was anguish behind the laughter. That year, her son had passed away. However, she kept her tears to herself. She simply never stopped making people laugh. Greg Barson directed the special. It featured tales from Roseanne Barr as well as others. It was a farewell without actually saying farewell. She continued to make appearances until 2007. And her spirit persisted despite her body's fatigue. In 1939, Phyllis Diller tied the knot for the first time. At the time, it appeared to be a typical love story. On November 4, she eloped with Sherwood Diller in Bluffton, Ohio. She was unaware that she would act as though nothing was wrong for the following 26 years. Sherwood refused to have permanent employment because of his agoraphobia. The entire burden was then placed on Phyllis, who wrote for newspapers, edited, and did everything she could to make ends meet while raising 5 children. Another infant had already passed away. Sherwood supported everyone by herself, even though she hardly ever showed up for a bomber plant work during World War II. She kept what was truly happening hidden from the world. To make fun of a slack husband, she made up the character Fang. However, the agony was genuine. She was concealing emotional abuse, quiet poverty, and gambling losses behind the chuckle. The date of the divorce was September 3, 1965. She didn't acknowledge how much it had upset her until much later. She got married again in less than a month. In what seemed like a quick getaway from the past, she married actor Ward Donovan on October 7, 1965. However, this new chapter quickly became much worse. It collapsed in a few of months. He overindulged in alcohol, vanished into affairs, and left her feeling alone once more. After 3 months, she filed for divorce, but it wasn't finalized until 1975. She first said nothing about his adultery and the turmoil in the house. Later, she used humor to mask her loneliness by making jokes about worthless marriages on stage since she didn't want scandal to derail her ascent. In actuality, it was just 22 weeks long the first time. More often than not, he was absent. And the ensuing quiet was much more deafening. Something milder came into her life years later. She met Robert Hastings in 1985. He became all she needed, even though he wasn't her spouse. Until his death from cancer on May 23, 1996, they shared her large Brentwood estate. At the age of 78, she never got married again. He referred to her as the love of his life in one interview. Far from the agony of her early years, they would play gin rummy together in the house. This time, after so many public displays of grief smiling, it was genuine. She had no desire to return to legal relationships. It was enough to have that calm company. However, Phyllis's personal hardships continued after that. In 1944, she gave birth to her daughter Sally, but by the 1950s, something was obviously amiss. Phyllis spent years trying to control Sally's schizophrenia at home when it took over her life. She made the tragic choice to put her in institutional care around 1960. Her husband's emotional instability also contributed to the stress, although none of this was ever included into her stage routines. She maintained the cheery housewife persona. Fans didn't find out what she had been carrying until much later. Sally passed away in 1993 at the age of 49. Phyllis had to continue grinning as she lost another child in silence. Then July 4, 2002, a day that was typically celebrated, took a completely different turn. At the age of 54, her daughter Stephanie passed away from a stroke. Following her marriage in 1973, Phyllis had assisted Stephanie in raising her 3 children. Abruptly, she was bidding farewell. She continued to work. She didn't spend any time in public mourning. Behind her hectic schedule and high-profile people, however, was an 84-year-old mother who had previously lost Sally in 1993, buried her son Peter in 1998, and was now attempting to maintain her composure following yet another setback. She had previously experienced another type of heartbreak in 1945. Within 2 weeks of his birth, her infant boy passed away. She had already been badly traumatized by a miscarriage before that. Nothing could have prepared her for losing a child, yet she and Sherwood had Peter in 1940 and Sally in 1944. For years, she kept it to herself. She didn't really come clean until her 2005 memoir, Like a Lampshade in a Whorehouse. In Lima, Ohio, he was laid to rest in peace. Phyllis outlived 4 of her 6 children by the time of her death in 2012. No joke could make up for that type of agony. In 1950, Perry, her youngest child, was born. Because of his dyslexia, he struggled in school and at home. Perry's reading difficulties felt like just one more mountain to climb on top of Sally's illness and the mounting death toll. However, he succeeded. He persevered, developed a business career, and ultimately took over his mother's management of the household. In a tempest of despair, he was the ray of hope. Perry supported her through it all and outlived her, demonstrating that not all chapters had to end tragically. The 1950s were anything but glitzy. She was barely making ends meet while raising 5 kids in a trailer park. Sherwood had failed once more, and the family was repeatedly evicted. In order to maintain her sanity, she practiced comedy in laundromats. When she eventually got a break in 1955, she was 37 years old and spent 89 weeks in a row performing at the Purple Onion in San Francisco. She didn't come to the stage with dreams, but with desperation. But with the support of a self-help book called The Magic of Believing, she persisted. She had gone through 2 divorces by the 1970s and was on the verge of going bankrupt. Although she didn't display it, court documents revealed the truth. Ward said he only made $500 a month, but she was making $100,000 and providing for the whole family. She adopted harsh traveling schedules, occasionally performing 200 gigs annually. People laughed at her self-deprecating quips about Fang, but she was struggling financially. Her victory in a $5 million music rights lawsuit in 1979 contributed to the situation's recovery. She continued to rebuild by herself once the men left the carnage behind. She physically rebuilt herself as well. She started a protracted plastic surgery journey in 1972. She had performed 15 surgeries by 1990. She was momentarily paralyzed after the initial facelift, which almost killed her. She eventually had her nose altered, her breasts diminished, her cheeks filled, her eyes raised, and even eyeliner tattooed. No 2 bodily parts were the same age anymore, she joked. She made it humorous in a 1993 interview. However, the surgeries weren't merely cosmetic procedures. They served as shields. When her heart stopped beating and a pacemaker was put in place in 1999, one of them almost killed her. She started writing in 1981 when she was 64 years old. She transformed her fear of aging into comedy with her book The Joys of Aging and How to Avoid Them. It sold as well as her other publications. She transformed pain into something that could breathe by using her pen in the same manner that she used her voice. She was also still getting over her divorce emotionally and attempting to remain relevant in a world that was changing at the same time. At the age of 85, she announced something fresh after leaving the comedy stage in 2002. She painted. She converted her house into an art gallery. She sold her artwork, had small parties, and grinned as visitors snapped photos next to a spotlight painting in her entryway. She made $5,000 on some of her works. Her grand piano was even up for sale at an estate sale in 2013. It took her 15 years to finish one painting. Even after she had to postpone a 2007 Tonight Show appearance on her 90th birthday due to a back injury, she continued to create. Silent struggles filled her last years. She had experienced cardiac arrest in 1999. Her heart had stopped altogether. She was crippled by medication reactions, but she recovered through therapy. Her distinctive laugh could still be heard on television by 2005 as she continued to voice characters on programs like Family Guy. She persisted even when heart problems, sadness, and previous wounds overtook her. On May 15, 2012, she accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award in Lima, Ohio, marking her final public appearance. Despite her fragile appearance, she grinned. At the age of 95, she passed away in her Brentwood home on August 20, 2012. At last, her heart had failed. According to her boss, she smiled as she passed away quietly while sleeping. Her ashes were dispersed at sea after she was cremated. Like her spirit, it was uncomplicated and unrestricted. She had concealed severe sadness, chronic pain, and intolerable losses, which the world later learned about. What the world witnessed, however, was laughing. She wanted things that way. She made being loud, goofy, honest, and broken all at once acceptable.